Okay, and that gets you vampire when you take that whole thing and it becomes an acronym. So basically, what it is, it's a giant gun essentially that has, I believe, some AI on board from L3 Harris, counter drone system, portable kit that you can stick on the back of your truck, any truck really. Most vehicles is vehicle agnostic with a cargo bed can put this thing on there. So it's kinetic, meaning it kills things. It is uses a small missile essentially to shoot drones out of the sky. It has an advanced precision kill weapon system that's basically, and you'll love this one too. It reminds me of a Marvel comics, right? Design conversion of the Hydra 70 unguided rockets, but it has a laser guidance kit on it. So that turns it into the precision guided munition here. And they say it creates less collateral damage, which again is important in international humanitarian law when you think about protecting civilians and cultural sites, etc. And it's easily installed. A couple people, common tools, about 2 hours. And so just kind of interesting as we've been talking about the Ukraine and the use of commercial drones in that conflict, the need for systems like this, because drones have really changed the face of warfare. They're so pervasive that now counter UAS is kind of the coin of the realm. So this is just one example. Love the name, just like what we have a couple weeks back, the Angry Kitten, electronic warfare pod, Mike, coming up with these hilarious names. But this one, everybody, the vampires have invaded Ukraine. So I would love to hear Carla's thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as versed for sure on the kind of drone counter drone technology that's out there, but I do think the drive to kind of be as specific as possible, be as targeted as possible, and minimize civilian or other casualties of buildings and other things is a huge plus, and I think that we're really moving towards that being like the standard rather than the abnormal. So anything that we can do to kind of be as precise as possible when we're trying to be strategically, militarily operating, really does lessen the nastier, kind of side effects of conflicts like the conflict in Ukraine. So I'm happy to see that. But also, as someone who I used to work for a NASA contractor, those acronyms, man, we used to keep a list of like the craziest acronyms that we had seen, and people really try to force them in. It's kind of funny. But
Yeah. So Jennifer, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was actually wondering, Don, just based on your own experience, how we might see this kind of technology as tested in war theater coming home to be used, by any of the four federal agencies that now have this counter UAS authority here in the UAS to take out drones when necessary. Do you see this particular technology as something that might be used here for other kinds of matters, not war theater, or do you see other kinds of counter UAS technologies as perhaps more prevalent in that realm?
Yeah, I think in the homeland and, kind of steady state, now we're talking kind of human rights law. You used Mike's earlier. You mentioned as a human right, we should have it as a human right. This is more a human rights law applies like in normal day-to-day operations versus in conflict. I think the challenge with an asset like this, unless we're talking like an on the border type situation or over water, if the ground risk, I think, even though this is precision, could be probably too high to be using in Chicago or Philly. And as you know, Jennifer, the right now the authorities for counter UAS are so limited. And here's the really scary thing, everybody. We can talk about like our feds using these assets, okay, like our federal government. And there's only a handful right now that have this authority, which, by the way, is sunsetting in like 30 days under the Preventing Emerging Threats Act. And so that was a big part of that recent White House summit on UAS and AAM, I think in early August. I know, Jennifer, you were a part of that. You tracked that with your clients. So even the feds, like not a lot of them have that authority. The DoD does. I think that's enduring in 10 USC 130I. But think about bad guys using this. I could throw this thing on the back of my truck. Now, obviously, L3 isn't going to sell this thing, liberally. Just like, I've been working a lot with Northrop Grumman, and they have, I don't want to call it a similar type. I think theirs might even be a little bit more AI ML enabled, because the effector aspect of it, that whether you use a laser guided munition, actual laser, you can put anything on theirs. It's called the MACE, the Mobile Acquisition and Queuing Effector, another acronym. So I know they were very interested in like Homeland Security and some of these other federal groups, purchasing that. The legal, kind of hurdles right now, I think, are definitely a limiting factor, even on the federal side. And as we know, the state, local, tribal, territorials, they don't have any of this authority, period. In fact, what I found really shocking about some of the conversations I've heard, whether it was the House or the Senate, Homeland Security Committee had some hearings, right, with DHS, FAA, and DOJ, as well as the White House Summit, this idea that everybody needs affirmative authority to even detect. I think that was, and I love your thoughts on that, Jennifer, because I think a lot of people felt that, well, passive RF monitoring, I mean, people do that with CB radios or like, ham radios? I don't know. I think a lot of people felt that was just okay and normal and not a big deal. But to hear all these federal agencies begging Congress for affirmative authority for the ability just to detect at the state level, federal, local, tribal, I was like, wow. And then I also heard the FCC had thrown out a couple of, I don't know if they call them letters of inquiry, LOIs, to a handful of companies, counter drone companies and individuals, like, and how are you doing that again? So that's really significant, I think, this maybe overarching lack of authority. What do you think, Jennifer?
Well, for sure. And there is in the realm of the FCC and preventing people from using counter UAS technologies that are sort of jamming RF frequencies, that the law is pretty clear on that, and the government can do those things, but individuals cannot. But the realm of the ability to pick up any kind of data, whether it's part of the Pen Trap Act, Wiretap Act, Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. There are all different ways to look at laws that are already on the books as preventing the ability to both capture electronic information and the mode of that communication. There are many different components to it, and there isn't just the authority to do that. And so that's why they need both the authority for counter UAS and the authority to be able to capture or wiretap this kind of information, even though it seems like it should just be readily available. And it is in fact available, but do you have the ability to tap into that and to use that information? And that really is the question that they're asking for clarity on.
So I think the key thing would be on the detection side, maybe just could a company like petition the FCC and say, hey, almost like on the FAA side, right? Like from a certification standpoint, here's what our product does. Here's how it, hypothetically passively monitors spectrum. Here's how it doesn't interfere with other communications. Can we get a license for this? Can we get approval? Is that possible even today without maybe a congressional statute?
A lot of these are in the U.S. code, and so it's going to require legislation in order to change it.
Wow. Yeah, so Congress get a move on. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Well, what you're saying is this is heavily medium dependent, right?
Yeah.
And you brought up CAFA, the way that was written, if I'm maybe I'm incorrect, but wasn't that about, people taking information from corporations or transferring money illegally? Like that's like kind of the context in which that was drafted?
The Computer Fraud and Abuse Act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and they've tried to like stretch that into like weird ways, right?
Well, nobody could have understood back then that you might consider an aircraft, a drone, to be a device or a computer, right?
Right.
Is it a computer? Yeah, maybe it is, right? So I think this is where definitions matter. This is where lawyers are important, and you have to kind of go back to, what was the breadth of what they were trying to address, And even if this wasn't specifically contemplated, could the definitions be considered broadly enough to incorporate these kinds of communications and the intersection of these kinds of communications?
Yeah, wow. And, you know, the interagency, a number of interagency folks put out a really good white paper on this a couple years ago, warning people like, hey, and outlining all these statutes. So if you haven't seen that, just Google interagency white paper or interagency, you know, counter UAS, and it should pop up pretty readily, I would think, in a Google search. So
Yeah,
Jennifer, I think that's on the CISA website, DAH. I know at a minimum it's on DHS's Cybersecurity and Information and Infrastructure Security Agency's website,
yes,
CISA.
for sure. I think it's actually called the Advisory on the Application of Federal Laws to the Acquisition and Use of Technology to Detect and Mitigate Unmanned Aircraft.
There you go. There you go.
Simple.
Another long one. I'm sure there's an acronym for that too that we haven't figured out. But, anyway.
Somebody's
All right.
working on it.
That's right. That's right. Well, Mike, we are getting so close to the top of the hour. The time has flown as usual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would love to. Yeah, go ahead.
No, we've got a lot of cool stuff coming up this week. We're also going to be at Commercial UAV next week doing some broadcasts. So tune in for those. We're going to do our traditional thing, you know, on the floor where Dawn basically grabs at least 10 people to talk about what's going on. I love these because you really do get like a snapshot of what's going on in the industry at kind of the moment when everybody's most excited about it, right? So that's going to be fun. If you're going to Commercial UAV, be sure to contact me and Dawn, or sign up for our email list and reply to the autoresponder. We'll see that, and maybe we can find some time to see you there. There's going to be a lot of action going on. Carla, you're going to be there?
Absolutely. Me and also the content specialist that works with me on GeoWeek, we're going as well. So he's going to learn all about drones. It's going to be great.
And, you know, like, speaking of GeoWeek, it's what, February 13th next year, up in Denver, like my home turf here. I went last year. It was spectacular. So if you've never gone to it, you should. It was a great, great, great event.
Yeah, we're
and
looking forward to both.
Yes, absolutely. And speaking of Commercial UAV, I'd be remiss not to mention, shamelessly plug our annual Flash Mob Networking Happy Hour. If you can get in, if you can travel on Labor Day on Monday, come in a little early, 7 p.m. You heard it here first. The location is going to be Gilly's Saloon at TI or Treasure Island, 7 p.m. on Monday. So meet us there, join us for a beverage, get to meet some people early. We had a ton of fun last year at the Mirage. We just rallied at the lobby bar. This one's a little bit more dispersed, so Gilly's was kind enough to say, come on down. So we are really excited about that. And
we've got another first that we're announcing today, right, Dawn?
Yep, I'm going to hand it off to Jennifer to do that.
All right.
Yeah, happy to do it. So, well, we just love the work that Dawn and Mike are doing to evangelize new technologies out there and some of the critical issues that we all need to be thinking about with respect to these new technologies. And so Aiken Gump will be working with them to put on some webinars, podcasts in the fall, October, November, December, that really brings to the fore the exciting work that the Aiken Gump technology practice is doing in AI, ML, autonomous systems, advanced mobility, and crypto and blockchain. So we'll be bringing lawyers to those conversations along with the clients that we're representing on really exciting and interesting projects, and hope to, you know, bring some really exciting content to the viewers and listeners here.
Yeah, we're really appreciative, Jennifer. And Aiken Gump, for those that didn't know, did also sponsor our Law Tech Connect workshop that we held with AUVSI as a co-located event in Orlando in April.